Alright, welcome back everybody to another episode of Dominate Every Aspect. And this week I wanted to talk about an appropriate rate of loss for your next contest prep. So with mine right now, the goal for these first 14 weeks or so was to be about averaging about 0.75 pounds of weight loss per week during this first phase. And really overall in my whole prep I was going to try to average about 0.75 pounds. But that is with me taking 3+ years off and not exactly knowing what my stage weight's going to be. I have a rough idea, anywhere between 168 and 170 pounds, but there's no certainty that I'm going to be that number. I could be lower, I could be higher. So really right now I am trying to speed things up just to get the majority of the fat off right now. And I'm only going to diet for a handful more weeks anyway, just in this first phase. So I've roughly been dieting for about 9 weeks since this is Dominate Every Aspect episode number 9. And I've only lost about 5 pounds in this time span. So roughly on average, that's about a half a pound, just over a half a pound per week, which is still good, but it's not quite at the rate of loss that I'm looking for. So last week, as many of you know who have been watching the videos, I did make another change to my diet, and it was reflected in this week's weigh-in. All week I saw very low weight. I saw a new low weight, which you'll see later on in the video. You can see how I'm looking, but I really wanted to try to push things these last so many weeks, just so I could stay on pace with myself. So, to answer the question I started the video off, what is an appropriate rate of loss for an athlete? Well, first of all, you have to figure out how much muscle mass obviously you have. A more muscular person, I feel like, can get away with losing weight a little bit quicker, just because they have more tissue to lose potentially. They could give up some tissue and not sacrifice too much. Now, a smaller person who doesn't have as much tissue, they don't want to be losing 2 pounds plus per week, because that's just going to set them up to lose too much weight overall, and that if you're in a deficit and you're in that big of a deficit, your chances to lose lean tissue are just greater. So on average, I like to see most people I should say, between half a pound and maybe 1.5 pounds per week. There are the extremes where if someone is super close to stage weight, they could lose more towards that half a pound. If someone really needs to lose a lot of weight and they have a lot of muscle, we could push it to 2 pounds, but that's about as far as I'd like to see it go. Just because at the end of the day, it is bodybuilding, and we do have to make sure we have as much lean tissue as possible. So, and that's why, a lot of people have been asking me that kind of see me in the gym or that see me out and about. I go to these different events and they're like, aren't you already dieting? And I said, yeah, I definitely am. Maybe they've seen a couple of these videos and they don't exactly know when I'm competing, and I tell them that I'm competing in September of 2018, and they look at me like I have a third eye on my head or something. And, I tell them, since I am doing this a little bit differently in these different stages, I'm going to bring my food up, and I do want to lose at a fairly slow rate. It is a very long process, but I'm just sticking to my own plan. So right now, I'm sticking to my plan with trying to average about roughly 0.75 pounds per week. I'm happy if it's closer to 0.6 to 0.75. I'm pretty much right there with the changes I've made recently, but just setting a number, having a rough idea of where your stage weight's going to be, and just holding true to that is going to be very important. So I've done I do calculations every single week just to see where I'm at roughly. I'm happy where I'm currently at. I'm really happy how my physique's looking, at least at this body weight, especially since I am in theory so far away from stage weight. I'm not going to make any changes to try to speed up the process anymore. I'm just going to keep my rate of loss where it is. And that's one thing that everybody really should focus on, is their average rate of loss. And not necessarily picking a show date and having to do that particular show. Obviously, with me being a pro athlete, there's only so many shows I can do. If you're an amateur, there's shows just about every weekend across the United States and even internationally. So I have to, get more or less to a specific date because there's a very limited amount. But what I'm getting at is you should first focus on bringing the best physique possible. And bringing the best physique possible, one factor is you're controlling your rate of loss. And then once you get closer to the show, or once you get closer to a stage conditioning that you really like, then you could pick out a show that's in your rough geographic area, and don't be afraid to travel with it. So this week, really focus on controlling your rate of loss and sticking to that throughout the entirety of your prep. And if you make your calculations right, hopefully everything works out for you. Once again, guys, hope you enjoyed the training footage, and especially the posing footage, since I am looking a little bit more like a bodybuilder now.